wait for a moment. I'd like to call to order this June 10th, 2020 meeting of the Clearwater Downtown Development Board. I'd like to welcome everyone and ask that at this time everyone who hasn't, please silence any cell phones that you have in your possession, and no private conversations, please. We'll begin by having our members introduce themselves and our ex officio members. I'd like to suggest that everyone speak up so that you can be heard through the mask. Okay, we'll begin on my left over here.
Venkat Devdani.
Shahab Imrani.
Ray Casano.
Paris Morphopoulos.
Festus Pobeni.
Caitlin Jammo.
Mark Bunker. Bryce Kipper.
Great. Okay, we'll move on to item number 2. We're going to go over the approval of the minutes on the March 4th, 2020 meeting. Does anyone have any corrections to make to the minutes of that meeting? Okay, do we have a motion for the approval of the minutes of the March 4th meeting?
I move we approve the March 4th, 2020 DDB meeting minutes.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Very good. Is there any discussion? Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it is unanimous. Okay, we'll go to item number 3. This is citizen comments for items not on the agenda. Before we get started, if there is anyone, please limit your comments to matters relevant to downtown. Comments on items on the agenda will be held until the agenda item itself. Speakers must identify themselves, and the time limit of 3 minutes will be enforced. Is there anyone, any citizen comments? Okay, we'll move on then. Number 4.1, the DDB meeting policies and procedures. I'd like to call on our DDB attorney, Ms. Elise Winters. Please brief us on this.
I'm going to speak fairly loudly because my back is to some of the people that need to hear me. So please don't think I'm yelling at you. We put together these policies and procedures, many of which you were following anyway. We loosely worked with Robert's Rules of Order, and we also looked at what the city is doing. These closely, they're not exactly the same, but they closely track what the city has in place. They're not as long as the cities because we, quite frankly, have more instruction in our bylaws that cover some of the areas that were covered in their policies and procedures. I assume you all had a chance to read them. Do you have any questions? Does anybody need a summary?
It might be helpful for everyone here to have a brief summary.
All right. What we've done is we have defined the duties and responsibilities of the chair, and they become the responsibilities of the vice chair after that. It is the chair's responsibility to run the meeting and keep order. On public comments, we have codified a lot of what we've done anyway. If you are talking, if you're in the part for comments not on the agenda, then if it's on the agenda, wait, we'll get to you. It has to be something that can come before this board. Our purpose is not taking care of the beach. So we ask that the comments be relevant to the Downtown Development Board and its purpose. And we have a time limit of 3 minutes in here. The agenda expenditure of funds and waiver of change of rules, these just give us, basically we're asking that you all have in front of you before the meeting any requests for funding, and that you have time to review them and make intelligent choices. The motions and discussions and votes, we're following, not quite as formal as Robert's rules, but we're not asking that you stand every time, but we ask that you listen to the presentation. During the presentation, if you have questions, not discussions, but questions, so you need clarification, that's the appropriate time for the board, the citizens, for the board to ask questions and clarification. Then the citizens get a chance to comment on that agenda item and within their 3 minutes. After that, if the chair calls for a motion. If there is no motion and there is no second, there is no discussion. Because if you don't have two people who care enough to put it on the table, then there's no reason to waste time on it. I'm giving you a paraphrase rather than reading it because I know you all know how to read. If the chair has the right to call recesses, we have put in here rules of conduct. Now, and we say that if somebody does not follow the rules of conduct, they can be removed from the meeting. None of us have a cattle prod, all right? So it is, unless we have a police officer here, we have the right, but not the physical ability. So to take that into account, we're doing what the city does, and if someone's unruly and they don't stop when asked to do so, then the chair can call a recess, and we stop for 10 minutes, and then we start up again. And we have time to deal with the problem. Okay? That's a really brief summary. Does anybody have any questions?
Sounds pretty good.
No, ma'am.
Now,
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Was that rule added because of the new appointments to the board?
No, this rule, this is a procedure that I'm a past president of this board. Am I close enough to the mic that I can turn sideways and talk? Yes. Okay, all right. No, this is something that I was working on before any appointments to the board.
Okay.
We had a draft policies and procedures in front of the board, I think September of last year, and we ended up getting caught up in discussion about 3 minutes versus 5 minutes versus 10 minutes. Do you have to state your address? Do you not state your address? And so that's when we took it back to Elise, and we've been working on updating it since that point in time.
I was on this board back in the early 90s, mid-90s, I think, somewhere in the dark ages, and these are the rules we followed.
Very good.
okay, any other questions from the board? Okay. Are there any citizen comments on the proposed policies and procedures? All right, I would like to request a motion that to adopt the DDB meeting policies and procedures.
So moved.
Very good. Do we have a second?
Second.
Very good. Okay, is there any discussion on these proposed policies and procedures? Does anyone have any comments or suggestions? Or okay, very good. So I'm going to call for a vote on this motion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it is unanimous. We'll move on to item 4.2. Okay, Anne, would you please help us out with this? This is the February 2020 financial statement.
Yes, Ann Lopez, CRA Program Specialist. So just to remind you, at the last meeting in March, the board approved a new financial policy that would allow the CRA director to sign authorizations for disbursement up to $5,000, and then once a month we would bring to you a listing of all of those expenditures throughout the month. So you'll see in your agenda item, there's a listing that shows you what expenditures did happen for the month of February. There was a total of $11,889 spent. Those included holiday lighting and storage, Publix, DDB meeting preparations, legal ads, excuse me, the CRA monthly fee, and your insurance to Shea Barkley for your liability insurance as the board, as well as commissions to the tax collector's office. At the end of February, your cash in bank was $228,064, and you'll see that your expenditures in excess of revenues is in the negative, and that is due to not receiving the expected reimbursement of property taxes from the CRA, which usually arrive March and April, but due to COVID-19, everything has been delayed. So we're hoping that when we come back next month and I bring you your financials for May, we'll see that increase in there. Any questions? Yes.
So the income is $657,000, 509, and then the expenditure is $372,000, 858. So the difference is coming to $284,000, 651. But the cash in the bank is $228,000 only. So, I mean, cash in the bank seem to be less than the difference between the income and the expenditures. Is this because we still did not receive
Yes.
income?
Yes.
Well, and remember, the DDB does not generate $657,000 in income. It's double counted. It's shown as income twice. What you're really looking at is that top number of the ad valorem property taxes, because what happens is that money comes to the DDB, the CRA receives its increment, just like it does from the county general fund and the city general fund, and then we pass back through that increment, which is where you see the interlocal agreement revenue. So the money comes back again through revenue. It's very confusing. For 2 years, we have tried to change this. It's not going to change.
Right.
But the county, there's a public meeting that has had to occur and has just in the past 2 or 3 weeks where the county tax board has to have a public meeting to say, yep, these are the values and this is the amount of tax revenue that's going to be coming in. That hadn't occurred yet, so the city could not transfer the CRA funds through to the DDB. So that will be happening. It's not, the money is there, it just hasn't been transferred between accounts yet, just in case you were concerned.
Okay. So are there any other board questions on this financial statement? Okay, are there any citizen comments on this financial statement? There being none, request a motion to accept for filing the February 2020 financial statement.
So moved.
Very good. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Excellent. Any board discussion on this financial statement? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to item 4.3, the March 2020 financial statement. We have a bit of a backlog due to COVID-19,
Yes.
and we'll take this one as well.
Yep. So now we're looking at your March financials, and here, same thing. You know, every month we'll bring forward just a listing of all your expenditures through that month. And for March, there were $32,909 spent. This included two payments to Ruth Eckert Hall per your agreement with them of $10,000 each. This included a payment for holiday lighting storage, legal ads, legal fees, the CRA admin fee, and commissions collected from the tax collector and the property appraiser from the county. Any questions?
Any questions, anyone? All right.
Yeah, I do have a question, if I may, Mr.
Go ahead.
Chairman. It says DDB minutes preparation. Can you give me a little more data on that?
Yes, so we have Sandy from our attorney's office who's here, who takes minutes for the DDB. We have another agenda item coming up to do a budget line transfer, but it's essentially the fee for Sandy to be here, to take the minutes, to then process them, type them all out, and send them on to us to give to you.
Thank you. Perfect. I do recall that now.
Very good. Okay, are there any citizen comments on the financial statement? Okay, I'd like to request a motion to accept this statement for filing.
So moved.
So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Very good. Any board discussion on this statement? All right. All in favor of adopting the March 2020 financial statement for filing?
Aye.
Aye. It is unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to the April 2020 financial statement. Doing some housekeeping here.
I'll be up here a lot tonight. Now we have April. Your expenditures were $6,454. This included your monthly CRA admin fee and your commissions to Pinellas County tax collector. Any questions?
Any questions for Ann? Okay. Now, are there any citizen comments on this financial statement? All right, I'd like to request a motion to accept this financial statement for filing.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Caitlin, second. Okay. Is there any board discussion on this financial statement? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Very good. Okay, that was item 4.4. So let's move on to item 4.5, CRA funding funding request for the Back to Business Assistance. Amanda, would you take that for us?
Yes, so the Clearwater City Council adopted the Back to Business Assistance Grant Program on May 7th in response to the COVID-19 pandemic's negative impact on small businesses and businesses that had reduced operations due to the governor's safer at home orders. So what it does is it provides emergency financial support through direct cash payments and professional services to qualifying brick and mortar as well as home-based businesses. And in your packet there, you have all the details around that. So applications were accepted by lottery. They're currently under review. Some grants have been issued. I think we counted this morning that there's 14 businesses so far within the DDB district that have been approved or in process. Economic Development and Housing Department is managing this grant program. So there's a $3,000 quick pay grant that immediately goes to brick and mortar businesses that can be used on rent, utilities, vendor payments, wages. And then they're also allowed $1,000 towards professional services, say marketing, legal services, and then once they complete those through a partner agency, Amplify Clearwater, the Tampa Black Business Network, or Prospera, then they can receive an additional $2,000 grant. And then home-based businesses are eligible for up to $3,000 following the same process. So what we're looking for tonight is for approval for the DDB to allow up to $50,000 to be spent towards this program. And what that would look like is after it's approved and paid out from the city's general fund, then the businesses that are located within the DDB, we would reimburse the general fund with DDB funds up to $50,000. Because it's in multiple stages, we don't know yet what that maximum number will be, because some might stop at the 3,000, some might go all the way through the professional services, et cetera. But originally, I think the city was looking for 75,000, but when we look through the budget and the other things coming up, I think that 50,000 is the recommended amount for a DDB contribution.
Okay. When do you think the city might know? When would enough time have elapsed that the city would draw the funds from the DDB? Would that be this year, this fiscal year?
A portion of it will be this fiscal year, because they'll be able to confirm with brick and mortar and home-based businesses, do you want to receive professional services or not? And if they say, no, we don't want professional services, then it's the $3,000 payment or the $1,000 payment for the home-based business.
So, but possibly some of it would happen after the end of this year, but from funds that are allocated.
The transfer, the funds could be spent over 2 fiscal years.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions, anyone? Keenan?
Types of businesses, any examples?
Sure, restaurants, salons, gyms. I believe some childcare services are eligible. Hold on, let me get the full list here.
I guess a better question would be, do they have to have some type of been in business for a year or two to receive, or?
Yes, you have to have a business tax receipt. So that is one challenge that they found is a lot of businesses within the city do not have a business tax receipt. So you do have to have a business tax receipt, and you have to have a way of proving what your expenses and income were for, in some cases, it's a couple months, in some cases, it's a year, right, prior to COVID. But there, it's a pretty long list.
Okay. Well, thanks, that answers it.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
Yes,
Sean?
may I? So if I'm understanding this, the city will take the applications and they basically expend it, and the DDB is funding a portion of that. Does the DDB get to participate in that choosing, or it's all city chosen and we just given some funds out of our budget?
That it's all city chosen, and applications have already closed. But the city allocated, I don't remember if it was 3.5 or 4 million total to this project. And right now, for the applications that they've received, they don't think they're going to hit that total mark. So there probably will be a second round of funding. You know, I say that to say that if you guys had a different idea of how you wanted to participate, we could look at that. But in this case, the city designed the program, applications were submitted, people were selected by lottery, because we weren't sure how many people would apply to begin with, and they are vetting those applications right now. So the city has taken on the legal liability, all the paperwork, right, doing all that review, and then simply asking if the DDB wants, versus us having our own program, right, that we can participate in direct business relief via this one.
Thank you. It makes sense.
Very good. Are there any other questions? Mr. Mayor?
So as of the deadline, there were 767 company or businesses that had applied. 619 of them were bricks and mortar, 148 were home-based. And the staff is still going through all the applications. There has been money paid out, but it's a pretty arduous process, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And we did not put the standards on it that the county did. We were a little more lenient so we could get money out faster. But I think the council would appreciate your participation in this.
Very good.
As we said, right now, out of those numbers, 14 are in the DDB district.
Do we have any additional questions? Okay, then I would look for a motion to approve the CRA funding request for the Back to Business Assistance.
Citizens' comments.
Yes, you're right, Elise, I missed that step. Are there any citizen comments on this motion, on this topic that's before us? Okay. Then I will request a motion.
I'll move to adopt this.
Very good. Do we have a second?
Second.
Very good. Okay, now we'll, any board discussion on this item. I think I'll open up by saying that I have some familiarity with this process and with I've studied this and the Pinellas Cares grant process, and the Clearwater one is much more favorable and less restrictive than the Pinellas County one. And it's not an onerous process. There is quite a bit of paperwork involved, and it is quite a lot for the city staff to go through, so it's very commendable that they've taken this on and have done such a good job pulling this off, like organizing this in the midst of the crisis and proceeding through vetting all these applications. So we in the DDB years ago pushed for reserves for some unknown reason, and we could never quite answer the question what those reserves were for. It was for some emergency we could not anticipate. And there was a lot of pushback on that, but who could have anticipated this? So here we are, and we do have reserves, and I can't imagine a better use for them than to assist businesses in our Downtown Development Board district. So that's my 2 cents. Anyone else have any discussion? Yes, Caitlin?
And because we're in the discussion portion, I'm going to phrase it as a statement, but it's more of a question. I guess I would look for clarity as to which line item this would be drawn from, because I believe we have a little more than 71,208 in line item 45, if I remember correctly, future downtown initiatives. And so rather than dipping into reserves, I don't know if I'm frankly 6 in one, half dozen in the other in terms of where it comes from, but I don't know. I would like clarity if we're dipping into reserves, so we would have 25,000 left, or are we dipping into the future downtown initiatives?
That's an excellent point. Yeah, I wasn't trying to imply that it should come from reserves. If the funds are available in other line items, that's where they should come from, and we should maintain our reserves because there may be a second wave. We don't know. So I think future initiatives is the appropriate line item to start out with. Would you agree with that, Amanda?
Yeah, that's fine. We can do it out of future initiatives. Again, it's probably going to end up being a little bit on a rolling basis, so we can go ahead and allocate it that way now, and if for some reason we need to come back and pull from different lines, then we can do that. We'll be back.
Very good. Is there any additional discussion? Anyone else have a comment? Yes.
I believe the deadline has already passed, but if there's a second round for funding, I think it should be advertised in social media and then emails and everything sent. Like if somebody missed the deadline, because of the PPP funding, the federal government funding and all, everybody didn't know about it and missed a lot of deadlines. And the economic disaster loan, I believe they could not apply now. So I think it should be well advertised that nobody in the DDB district should be missed.
Excellent point. Anyone else have anything to add? All right.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So his suggestion is great. How do we go about that? To actually let the downtown businesses to know about this?
Well, the previous program was advertised across every social media channel, radio. There were robocalls that were sent out. So they had a pretty strong campaign, which, of course, people have to hear something 7 times to remember it, right? Mm-hmm. We know that. It has to be over and over. So if they do a second round, we'll have that again. Plus, now the CRA's back, right, fully staffed, and you guys, so we'll have, even more time and people to push the message. But, if we think that's going to happen, then we can put it as an agenda item to talk about what you guys think would be most successful, right, in terms of really reaching people, if we need to do direct mailing, if we need to do posters, right, some other ways besides robocalls and radio and social media.
Thank you.
Very good. Any additional discussion? Okay, so I'd like to call for a vote on this item.
So moved.
No, do we not have a motion on this already?
Yeah.
We do have a motion, just all in favor.
Aye.
Aye. It passes unanimously. Okay, we'll go to item 4.6, the Dcma funding request for $10,000. Howard, can you guide us through this, please?
Good evening, Board. Howard Smith, Business Assistant Administrator with the Community Redevelopment Agency. I'm bringing you today item 4.6 for a funding request from the Downtown Clearwater Merchant Association. With that, the request is to be reviewed for marketing the downtown merchants, to be able to create a video, also additional promotions and music for the businesses in the downtown Clearwater area. There is a short video, which I have Lena Teixeira as well as Carolyn Bradham here, of the Dcma representatives, to be able to explain the request a little bit further in detail. So with that, I'd like for you all to view the video and then bring up Lena to share.
I got this feeling inside my bones. It goes electric wavy when I turn it on. Off from my city, off from my home. We're flying up, no ceiling when we in our zone. I got that sunshine in my pocket, got that good soul in my feet. Feel that hot blood in my body when it drops. Ooh, I can't take my eyes off of it, moving so phenomenally. Come on, like the way we rock it, so don't stop. And under the lights, when everything goes, nowhere to hide when I'm getting you close. When we move, well, you already know. So just imagine. Nothing I can see but you when you dance, dance, dance. Good, good creeping up on you, so just dance, dance, dance. Come on. All those things I shouldn't do, but you dance, dance, dance. And ain't nobody leaving soon, so keep dancing. I can't stop the feeling. So just dance, dance, dance. So just dance, dance, dance. Ooh, it's something magical. It's in the air, it's in my blood, it's rushing on. I don't need no reason, don't need control. I fly so high, no ceiling when I'm in my zone.
Great.
Lena Teixeira, 522 Cleveland Street, President of the DCMA and Vice Chair of the CDP. As you can imagine, COVID-19 was thought by many to be the final blow to an already challenged downtown. The decision by the city to close the 500 and 600 block to vehicle traffic and creating a type of pedestrian food court proved to be the ray of hope in our dismal forecast. It far exceeded our expectations. Since then, we have collected over 800 signatures petitioning for its continuation. We implemented an online survey which resulted in over 197 participants, with 95% favoring permanent closure. Thankfully, amidst this pandemic, our community strengthened and came together. Our relationships with our community partners became our lifeline. One such partner was Amplify. They provided diverse webinars to support and educate its members to facilitate navigating through these uncharted waters. One such webinar focused on the role of social media in the recovery phase. It emphasized the importance of separating ourselves from the noise. From this came this DCMA video, in which it features business owners and staff celebrating our downtown and our survival. We were fortunate to have Mayor Hibbert and his wife Teresa do a cameo. This video has been viewed 12,800 views in my 2 pages alone. So we are on the right track, and that's where we're going to allocate any funds that we have. Thank you.
Hello, committee. Carolyn Bradham, Carolyn's Kitchen at 421 Cleveland. We're requesting $10,000 to help us with our video promotion and production. We've made one so far, and we plan to make another one in September. So the funds that we're asking for of the $10,000, we would like $4,000 allocated for video production and promotion. We're promoting right now the current one we have, and Lena already has a second one getting ready for production so that we can release it in August to get us in through the fall. And the other part of the request is $6,000 for music. We right now, the DCMA is assisting with music. We had enough money to get us through this month to help with the merchants, but in both of our blocks, in the 500 block and in the 400 block, on Friday and Saturday night, we've been supplementing so that we can bring in live music to help bring more people downtown. And I can tell you the response has been phenomenal. The merchants themselves are definitely working to bring in very good talent and to coordinate it so that everyone can benefit on the same block. We have 9 restaurants on the 400 block, and there are 4 right now on the 500 block. This is something that we want to get started. We have other promotional things that we are definitely going to plan this summer in addition to this, but we feel if we can get some backup and some support, these 2 things will be what will really help us to be able to market and promote downtown and really help identify ourselves as a unique destination place, actually in our whole Tampa Bay area. The response that we are getting from our own customers, people coming in that haven't been here, I can just speak from my own restaurant, the comments that I've gotten, just overwhelming support, just love the concept and love the fact that there is something different that they can come to and enjoy a nice dinner downtown. Is there any questions?
First, thank you. Thank you, Lena, for that effort, and welcome back to the DDB. Yeah, I think that's extremely well done on that production and the idea and the whole thing behind it. I'm curious on the funding. Are the bands being hired and selected and paid by the restaurants and then being reimbursed by the DCMA, or is the DCMA handling this?
What we have done, the DCMA has appointed 2 captains on each block, and they are coordinating with all of the restaurants on their block. They all have resources. They have bands, different bands that they've used in the past. So we have a captain on each block, and then they are coordinating which bands are going to get scheduled at what time. Definitely Friday and Saturday night we're supplementing. Restaurants themselves will be doing additional supplementation for other evenings. We're looking at opening up for some Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights as well. But we feel that if we can at least support a Friday and Saturday night effort, that's when we have the most traffic downtown, and we really want to give it, a really good quality representation.
Okay. And is this outdoor entertainment only, or also inside the
It's
restaurant?
all outdoor. We're basically 1 band per block, and we're trying to put them more toward the middle of the street so that we can put our speakers elsewhere so both sides of the street can get them and, all the way down the street.
Excellent. Anyone else have any questions? Caitlin?
In terms of the funding that's already been granted for various events, what is the status of those events, if you know? Obviously, we're all in questionable time, but do you know what the plan is for those events that have already been funded?
I think we've already submitted for our funding that we received last year. And then we're just asking for this specific project. We haven't really asked for like a whole year's worth of things because frankly, we don't know what's going to happen. There are some ideas we have that we'd like to be able to promote, but, we got a plaza handed to us out of nowhere, and it's basically what can we do to captivate this thing right now and to really use the gift that we've been given to get the most bang for our buck. And so we are only asking for funding for this specific project. If it goes forward like we think it is, there will definitely be some other projects that we think we can bring downtown. But this is something that we know that we can definitely control, that we feel is going to really give us the most opportunity to grow and to expand our businesses that we have going on right now. So that's why we chose this avenue.
And Howard has an update. They have submitted receipts since the staff report was created, which Howard can fill you in on that.
That was more so my question.
Yeah.
Very good. Go ahead, Ben.
2 questions. The ads will go into Facebook ads?
Definitely we're doing social media, Facebook, Instagram, every single merchant themselves, obviously, on their own Facebook pages. We have our DCMA, definitely with Clearwater. I mean, we are promoting on every avenue that we can.
So of the budget, how much of that would go into ad spend versus creation of videos?
It depends on how cheap we can get that video made. We've asked for $2,000 per video, and we've already spent some money toward that on this first production, and whatever's left from that, that's going to go all into Facebook ad and promotion. Same thing will be done on the second video.
Yes, I've been down there and I think it's fantastic. The live music added a lot and the outdoor seating. The one complaint I heard from a few people is that the 2 bands kind of blended together and there was a dissonance there. Is there a way to stagger the sets?
Well, and that is why we now have a block captain who's going to be coordinating times and bands and locations, absolutely. The first weekend, it was fine, and then all of a sudden, what happened, Roxy's was doing a soft opening, and they had their own music scheduled, and Downtown Pizza had their band scheduled, and so it became a discord. Those of us who were in the middle of the block, our customers ended up coming inside because they couldn't take it, So yeah, that definitely got handled that next week because it was just not, it was a little bit too much of a discord for everybody. And now we have a block captain and they'll just coordinate everything.
And I'm very pleased to see musicians getting paid.
Oh, absolutely. And there are some fabulous musicians that we've had. There's some good people around. We love to pay them.
Very good. Any other questions from the board? Okay. Any citizen comments on the proposed DCMA funding request?
Good afternoon, board members. My name's F. Dondi Gutierrez. I live in the city, 1441 Pine Street. Flowdrone.com back in November for the arts did a promotion for downtown that included the businesses and the murals. We were awarded second place. We received $1,500. And so my concern here is just, number one, are we duplicating anything? But if we're using city monies or if monies are distributed from a city agency, that at least some RFP or some type of formal process so that other people can be creative and submit their ideas like we did in November with the Arts Council. I don't know if that's going to be addressed under your new business, under adoption of new grant funding request policy, but I think to be as transparent as possible and as fair as possible would help the misconception that the city is just feeding insiders. That's all I like to say.
Okay. I think the response I would make to that is that when the city, and I'm not speaking for the city, but when the city has a proposal that they want done, or when the DDB has its own proposal that it wants to get quotes on, we do go through a process like that. But the DDB is also accepts requests from groups in the community that want to do some kind of activity for us, for the downtown. And if we find them worthy, we grant them the funds. We don't then turn around and shop it out. We go with, we either accept it or not accept it. And that's been our practice for many, many years. Right? Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll say that's correct. And in this case, the Downtown Merchants Association, they have come to the Downtown Development Board to request grant funds for their marketing campaign. So they are the ones who are making all the decisions and doing all the hiring and the creation process. And the short video campaign that you participated in, which we had great, stunning results from that, loved them. That's why you saw a call, because the DDB staff, the city staff, we have to go through a purchasing process where, we solicit multiple options.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's just the perception that it gives to other people. I understand the policy, but the perception, you have to look at the other side.
You actually, sir, I don't mean to interrupt you, but unless you're at the microphone, you're not actually being part of the meeting. Nobody can hear you online and so on.
You want me to come up there?
If you have something additional to add, you can come up and say it.
I just wanted to state that it's just a perception, and perception is reality. And I understand that you have a policy and that they brought it up forward. I don't knock them for that. It's just that if you use city funds or public funds, or it's distributed through a city quasi-organization such as your board, the perception is from some people who maybe don't have all the information is that it's just insiders who are getting it. And that's all I wanted to bring to you, is that, the old concept is the glass half full, half empty. Well, this is the other side of it, that some people legitimately have a complaint and you can't fault them for that. That's it.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
I would just like to say...
Before you say, could you identify yourself,
Oh,
please?
I'm Rebecca Kay. My name's Becca Kay. I would just like to say, you know what would be really cool in downtown is to have some art shows. You know, Pierce Street Market was really cool. And my daughter and I would go down there, you know, once, twice a month. And it was so great. And I would love to see something like that come back because that brought people to downtown. And then they go and have lunch if it's on a Saturday, you know, a couple weekends out of the month. And I think that would just be a really great thing to bring back because we really enjoyed that. People who don't live downtown or normally go downtown, you know, that will bring them downtown as well. And if you're going to close those 2 blocks, well, then you can, you know, it allows more free flow of people moving back and forth. The other thing I'm going to add to that is I like to support downtown businesses too, and I have been going to Downtown Pizza on Thursday nights, and they have a great trivia night on Thursday nights. And Jake Postorino with Timeless Entertainment is the host, and he's fabulous. And we kind of need some more teams down there because we need some competition. Anyway, it's a great business to support as well. Thank you.
Okay. Now, Howard, did you have anything to add?
I did want to ask a question in regards to the Dcma expenses. Those have been submitted, and we've gone through the process of reconciling, and I believe that they're currently sitting with the chair right now to review and sign off on. So for all the Dcma previous expenses, those have been reconciled.
If I may, Mr. Chair, sorry. So that line item, I believe it's 15,000. The expenses have added up to that, so this would be new, or is there any left over? That was kind of more so my thought.
Yeah, those expenses total out to be $15,000 for the request that was submitted for the 1920 fiscal year.
Thank you.
Okay.
Very good. Did you have something you wanted to say?
So I would say that if, you know, if this request is approved, we'd be splitting it between promoting downtown and special events between those line items.
Okay. All right. Are there any other citizen comments on the proposed DCMA funding request?
Mr. Chairman.
I was asking for citizen comments there.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay. If there's no more citizen comments, before we move to discussion, we'll ask for a motion for this. Is there a motion? Can someone make a motion for the DCMA funding request in the amount of $10,000?
So moved.
Very good. Do we have a second?
Second.
Very good. Now it's open for discussion. Shahab.
Thank you. It was more of a question. Once this video is produced, and I guess we'll be asking you.
So the one that I'm working on next is actually doubling down. I'm actually asking a musician to write a song about Clearwater so we can own the rights. And instead of, it's just going to be on a wider level. And we're going to use a little bit more of a professional cameraman. So it's going to be at a higher level, and we're hoping that to expand its effects. So that's where we're at right now. The musician has agreed. We're just waiting for the song to be written.
That's great. I like that. So once this video is produced and we allocate this funds and we do the marketing, how long of a period are we looking at utilizing this for? Is this something
That's really hard to predict. I mean, you know, in my dreams, it would take off and it would be top 40. I mean, that's how I selected my musician. I selected him on his following, on the type of music, the fact that he has a national platform, that he's been on America's Got Talent, that he's open for Ed Sheeran. So he is primed to go up. And I would love the song about Clearwater to get us there. But I don't know how successful it's going to be. We can just hope, right? But I would love for it to be on the radio waves all over the country for like a year.
Understood. I'm sorry I wasn't very clear. The question was, once we allocate this and we do the marketing, this project, how long do you think this project, with the funding we've given, will go on? Is that for 30 days, 2
Are you
weeks?
talking about the logistics of the actual?
The
doing
music is for 2 months, correct?
Sorry?
The music is for 2 months or 4 months?
We're hoping, we're minimum 2 months. We're hoping for 4, because some of the musicians have been donating half of their fee to help us. So if we can manage the fees, we can extend it to 4 months, if not. So that's a moving target, right? Because every block captain has to decide which music, and as COVID-19, it fluctuates, and so, but yes, 2 to 4 months. Now you're talking about the video or the music?
Music.
The music. So we're averaging $200 to $400 a night for the musicians. And it fluctuates, right? There's some that are around $200 a night, some that are $400. We tend to put the ones with the bigger draw on Fridays, because that's where the most people come. Saturdays, we're still struggling to keep the streets as full as Friday. So it's a play thing that we're doing. We're playing with the music, with the programming. But we're hoping for 4 months.
Thank you. So we're looking at 2 to 4 months.
Right, which would take them through the end of this fiscal year, and then we're anticipating a request, depending on how this goes, then we would expect to have another funding request for support that would start beginning October 1st, your new fiscal year.
Great.
I just want to alleviate this burden from the merchants.
Right.
They've been closed for 2 months, the rents were still due, so we were hoping to alleviate that from the merchants.
I am all for it. It's actually fantastic. The more we track the tension, the more people will show up. And my concern was it's going to be only 1 month or 2 weeks, but 2 to 4 months, that's great. If we can continue, expand it, that'd be great.
Excellent. Any additional discussion? Very good. Thank you, Lena. Okay. All in favor of approving the DCMA funding request for $10,000, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? There being none, it's unanimous. Okay, we'll go to item 4.7. Ann, could you take that for us?
So item 4.7 is a budget line transfer in your current 1920 budget. This budget transfer will cover our attorney fees throughout the rest of the year. At the beginning of the year, we had only budgeted $5,000, but because we had done the meetings and everything with the Code of Ordinance as well as the bylaws, we've gone over our line. And you can see if you look at your April financial statement, we're actually in the negative $513. We also have, we normally pay out our meeting minutes. We would pay that directly to Sandy. We're now having her incorporated into our fees for the attorney. So what staff is recommending is that we transfer the $5,000 from the high-tech workforce line item, as well as $5,000 from the DDB ordinance update project, and the remaining balance from the meeting minute preparation, we transfer all that into your legal fees line item, which would bring the balance to around $10,000, $10,385 for the rest of the year. Any questions?
Make the number you just gave, the 10,000?
Yes,
the total amount for the year.
Mm-hmm.
And how much of that is already spent?
So of that, the recommended 10,000, none of it has been spent. Right now, we had originally approved $5,000, and we've spent all of that $5,000. We've actually spent $5,513, which is why we're requesting the line transfer. So if we transferred over those 3 lines into this one, it would bring your balance to $10,000. It would bring your available balance to $10,385, which should cover the remainder of attorney fees and meeting minute preparation through the end of this fiscal year.
Does anyone have any comments or questions?
Question? No?
I don't think so. Okay. Then are there any citizen comments on the proposed budget line transfer? Okay, I'd like to call for a motion on approving the budget line transfer for fiscal 19-20.
I'll move the line item.
Second.
Very good, Caitlin seconds. Is there any discussion on this proposed budget line transfer? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it's unanimous. Okay. Moving on to 4.8.
4.8 is to adopt the entire board, the 7-member board, as the audit committee. The city had issued an RFP for an independent CPA for audit firms for the next fiscal year that would take you through 2024. We received 4 responses. Those came back on the 2nd of this month, and we'll send out those responses to you electronically. That's how we received them this year, so everyone be on the lookout. You'll receive an email with all 4 of those. And when we come back at the July 8th meeting, you will all sit down as the audit committee to approve an auditor that will take place to do your audit for the next 5 years. So this agenda item is to essentially appoint all of you as the audit committee.
And this is a requirement of state law.
Yes.
We're not making you do this just to torture you.
It used to, in the past, it used to be a 3-member committee, which was the treasurer, Ann Fogarty France, and Monica Mitchell, who's the city's assistant finance director. But because of changes in state statute, staff recommended the easiest way for us would be to just have the entire board serve as this committee.
Okay. And do we need a motion for this, or can we just appoint?
You can just appoint, the chairman appoints committees.
Okay. So consider the entire board appointed to the audit committee, and we will be in session for a brief part of our next scheduled meeting.
Yep, July 8th.
On July 8th.
Thank you.
Okay. So now we'll move on to item 5.1, and that's a discussion on the bylaws. Our attorney again.
Okay, some of your more boring work sessions and meetings have been with me on the ordinance and the bylaws. We completed the ordinance. We can't amend the ordinance by ourselves. We are requesting that the city review that for amendment. What the overall idea was that we move a lot of the procedural matters to the bylaws. And so the approval at our last meeting, at our last work session, I took into account all of the suggestions you all have made and all of the written suggestions I had, incorporated those that could be incorporated. You have marked and clean versions. We have to give 45 days notice in order to amend our bylaws. So what we're asking is that you go through them now, and not right this minute, but go through them quickly, and if you have any problems, let us know so that we can deal with them, because we are targeting August. If you do approve the amended bylaws, it will be subject to the city's approval of the amendment of the ordinance, because they both have to happen or they don't make sense, they don't mesh right together. So any approval of these would be contingent upon approval by the city of the amended ordinance in order to avoid gaps.
Very good.
No action is required of you today. I'm just giving you a heads up that within the next couple of weeks, we'd like the action of you reviewing them and making sure we didn't miss anything.
Great.
Any questions?
Anyone? Okay, so everybody has their homework. Thank you, Elise. Okay, we'll move to 5.2, funding request form and procedure. Amanda, will you take the helm?
Yes, so March 3rd or 4th, whenever our last meeting was a very long time ago. But at that meeting, we had a really good conversation around what a funding policy and process could look like. So what you have in your agenda is a new policy that we're looking for you to adopt tonight. And essentially, funding requests are going to be considered on a rolling basis in the following categories: marketing, business assistance, and project or policy work. The DDB is going to allocate a defined amount of funding for each category during their annual budget process, and then that you'd prioritize funding requests that align with your adopted work plan, so that it's going to, your budget and your work plan are going to work together, and then that'll help us communicate to Dcma and other organizations and individuals who request funding what your priorities are. The applicant will fill out a funding request form. They'll submit it to CRA staff. We're going to email you to solicit any questions or comments, right? Because one of the things that we talked about in the March meeting was that you didn't want to be overly prescriptive on the front end, right? You didn't want to say, oh, we're only going to fund 15% of a total project cost, or we're only going to fund at this stage of a request. That you wanted to keep that more open. At the same time, we don't want applicants to appear and not be prepared to answer your questions. And then instead of getting an answer that night, they have to come back to meeting after meeting after meeting, right, to answer questions. So they'll fill out the funding request form, review it with CRA staff. We will send it out to you for comment, not discussion among yourselves, not decisions, but emailing back, most likely to Howard and saying, well, how long will this program run? Or, have they tried this before in other places? Whatever those questions might be. After the feedback is received, then their request will be scheduled for the next available DDB meeting. At that time, the board can choose to grant the funding, deny the funding, or continue it to another meeting. All property owners, businesses, and projects that occur in your district are eligible for funding, and funding requests have to comply with state and local and DDB ordinances. So our goal in this, and I believe our shared goal in this on a staff and board member perspective coming out of that conversation, is we want to increase flexibility, right? We don't want everybody just to have to come at one time a year, and if you miss that, then you're out of luck, right? We want to provide more clarity for everybody on what the priorities are for funding. And we want staff to be able to help applicants as much as possible prepare a successful application. Are there any questions?
Caitlin?
I know in years past, the grant request form or funding request form has been circulated just for comment. Is that something that's specifically scheduled? Yearly we do it at this day, or is that just something where if we decide, hey, we have input, we throw that out to you?
I think if you'd like to give input on the actual form, please work directly with Howard on that. I don't know that we want to spend time in this setting all group editing a form, right? I think in the policy and funding decisions, that's where you guys are clearly, those are your decisions and your authority. And then for what piece of information they're putting where, we can handle that for you.
Any other questions? Okay, do we have any citizen comments on the proposed form and procedures? Okay. Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the funding request form and procedure.
I move we approve the funding request policy.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Very good. Okay, so is there any discussion? Anyone want to say anything about this? One thing I would say is, in years past, we used to go through a torturous process at budget time for each individual grant application for, $1,500 here, $500 there, $3,000 there, for the entire budget forecast out a year in advance. And then inevitably, people would come up with other requests or other ideas or proposals during the course of the year. So this seems to be a little more flexible and a little less painful, because we can, during our budget process, we can still allocate into various buckets how much money we want to put on marketing or on advertising or, whatever the category might be. And then we don't have to get granular at budget time on, $1,500. Keenan?
I have a question for, I think, Howard. Will this end up being online in some format as a form, or always be a paper?
Well, the communication for the form is to make it electronic, so that way anybody that's requesting to apply for funding, that document can be sent to them, and it can be filled out electronically in terms of being returned back to us. As far as housing it on our side, I think we have the ability to be able to do that, but I have to follow up.
Very good.
Yeah, so right now, and we're working with Rosemary DeMoore and Public Comms, because downtownclearwater.com, that can be really kind of the front-facing home for the CRA and the DDB in terms of funding requests, because really everybody's going to go there and say, where's the grant money, what's going on? And then the myclearwater.com has really served as your statutory legal home for the CRA and for the DDB. That's where you go to have minutes from the meeting, for officially adopted plans, for links to ordinances. So building on what Howard said, we don't know exactly what page that form will live on, but we definitely want it on the website, on the Downtown Clearwater website, so that we can start advertising it and putting it out there more. Because before, the funding requests were, if you didn't know Ann Fogarty France or someone on the DDB, then you didn't know how to access funds, was kind of what it had evolved to over time, is you had to know someone, to the gentleman's earlier point, in order to request funding. So I know this work is tedious, so like redo the ordinance, redo the bylaws, update policies, all this stuff, but we're really trying to expand our transparency, expand our accessibility, and that's the work that it takes.
Thanks.
It's a lot of work. So again, to add to, that might be relevant to the gentleman that was making his point earlier, this is the procedure that if somebody wants to participate in the downtown and contribute something to the downtown, they don't need to wait for the DDB or some other entity to issue an RFP. Anyone with a laudable project worthy of consideration by the board can fill out an application and be considered for it, and all they have to do is go through the process and ask for it. And it doesn't have to go through competitive bidding. It can just be awarded to any worthy candidate that we think will actually produce and not misspend the funds. Okay. So is there any other discussion? Did you have something? Okay, good. So all in favor of approving the funding request form and procedure, say aye.
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 Any opposed? It's unanimous. All right, DDB work plan, item
Great.
5.3.
Thank you. So you should have this handout from your packet. And again, way back in March, we had a 3-month process that the board had okayed for soliciting feedback, doing an electronic survey, right, looking at a draft plan, and then adopting one. So we've updated that just a little bit, where tonight what I'm looking for is consensus on this proposed new timeline, or if you want to change it, let me know how you want to change it, and would like to identify any outstanding questions or information you'd like to have in each plan area, whether that's marketing, business assistance, or policy or projects. So before, we did a presentation on creative placemaking, right, and the role of placemaking in downtown revitalization. We gave you examples of how DDB funds had been used in the past, which was primarily grants for various sizes of special events, but that you had done restaurant renovations before, you'd done marketing campaigns, you helped with the boat slips, right? So the DDB's had a wide range of projects over the life of the DDB, but in the past, 5 to 10 years, it had been mostly focused around special events. So what we want to do moving forward is, keeping these kind of 3 buckets for ideas, but on Tuesday, June 23rd, having a work session that it's open to the public can watch, but really it's a work session for DDB members to talk about their desired outcomes in each of these areas. So thinking about whether it's in percentages or dollar amounts, what would you want to allocate to marketing activities or business assistance? I know Howard had some conversations with you, like what is the thing you want to be known for? What is the 1 or 2 things you really want to focus on in the next year or 2 within these categories? So we'd have the work session on June 23rd in the evening. Then we're proposing to send out an electronic survey for the about 50 email addresses that we do have for 3 weeks. And then we'll also put on, distribute it via social media to get residents and property owners and businesses in downtown to give us feedback on what they would like to see the DDB work on, again, within those plan areas. And you see here asking them, what are downtown's assets, right? So not just what are the challenges and barriers, but what do you appreciate? What do you think is working about downtown that we can build on? Any insights that they might have. And then, of course, ideas that they have that would help downtown revitalization. On July 8th would be our in-person meeting with time for public comment within the DDB's regular meeting on this work plan. And then at your first meeting in August, having a draft plan and a preliminary budget for you to discuss.
Sounds right. Anybody have any questions? Okay, I think we're good. We don't need a motion here, do we?
No, I think consensus is.
Yeah.
You're good?
We're good.
I'll reserve the right to ask questions later when I understand it better.
Okay. So and you're going to tell us the date and time of the work plan session?
So the 20th, and the time for the 23rd, please.
5:30, right here, in Chambers.
We'll have snacks.
And how long is that scheduled to go for?
I don't have an end time. I have a start time of 5:30. I don't have an end time.
Had we discussed it before, how long this was going to be? Was it?
I mean, I would think you'd want at least an hour.
I think at least an hour. Is everybody good for an hour to an hour and a half?
Yeah.
We can schedule for 2, and if it ends earlier, it's...
Okay. Do we have a consensus then? It appears so. Yeah, okay. So let's move on then to the next item. Thank you. So 5.4, that was...
Me again.
You again, yes. You keep popping up here.
So the Cleveland Street median lighting project, it is sitting with finance now. That RFP should be released any day. So that's very exciting that that's moving forward. Also wanted to let you know that we have the CRA has established a partnership with Amplify Clearwater to help do the paperwork processing for special events that occur in downtown. So they're working with us to advertise to different individuals and groups to say, would you like to host some kind of event downtown? And then we have 10 different sizes of events. And they will do the paperwork in coordination with city special events department. And they will do a base level of promotion. So we're paying them for that service. But then the event producer is still responsible for paying for the cost of their staffing and materials and the actual production of the event. But one of the things that we've heard is that the paperwork is a barrier, sometimes marketing is a barrier, right, to producing an event. So we wanted to take that barrier away and connect events with businesses, and Amplify has the largest membership, right? They're connected with all the local businesses, so we really want to give different organizations an opportunity to connect with each other to produce things that make downtown vibrant. One idea that we were brainstorming just in a kickoff conversation was, I said to Amanda Payne, who's the CEO, like, you have all these landscaping companies, right? Well, we have all these big spaces that if they wanted to come together and do some kind of big living sculptural installation, right, and show off what they can do with their landscape architecture or carving, bushes, whatever it may be, that could be interesting. So I don't know what's going to happen out of it, but I'm really excited about it, and we're thinking that whether it's virtual or socially distanced or in person, that we're going to be flexible and adaptable and just encourage people to keep an eye out for that. We had 2 facade grants recently that the CRA trustees approved, 808 Court Street and Philly Joe's. If you haven't seen those buildings, please go by them. It's immense improvements, really makes a big difference. And then, of course, we had the housing incentive was approved on Chestnut, which is also taking a very blighted property and major improvements and adding housing into downtown. And the last thing, Cleveland Street's closed through Labor Day, 400 and 500 block to vehicular traffic, and you'll see signage. We're going to make it look better. That is the long and short of what I'll say. We're working on that. And then I just want to bring up Howard briefly to talk about the launch of the restaurant voucher program.
So for the board, and then also our viewers at home, the CRA has a summer 2020 dining program. You can find that information on the downtown Clearwater website. Once you go to that link, there are 2 interests. One is for business and one is for residents to be able to apply. The program actually launches on July 1 in support of the holiday weekend, and it will run for 60 days. Since the information was released on June 1st, there has been minimal wraparound marketing for this. It has been picked up by social media, but we've had great feedback and great buzz for residents to be able to apply. As of this morning, we had approximately 1,400 individuals that have applied for the Summer Meal Voucher Program. We also have 11 businesses that applied, and then with that, we'll be closing out the businesses for their application on this Friday for the 12th, and then we will plan on launching the program and getting all the communication back to the residents for their choices for submissions on the 30th.
And tell them what it is.
Excuse me?
Tell them what it is.
Oh, wait. It's the summer dining program. It is a split between the CRA and the business for us to partner, where the CRA will pay $10 and the business will pay $10 towards a $20 voucher. For the residents of Clearwater, and it's primarily only for the residents of Clearwater, then they can have a unique dining experience in a restaurant that they have not visited before. And the goal is to be able to provide new foot traffic to the business. It runs from the hours of from 5 o'clock to close for the business, and that's Monday through Friday, and also on Saturday and Sunday from open to close for the business. And at the end of the day, again, like I said, it's generating new foot traffic to the business for a customer who's never been into a particular retail establishment to be able to have an engaging meal. Any questions?
Could you reiterate the website address?
Yes, downtownclearwater.com. And once you click on that, once you go to the website, you actually see a tab that says Summer 2020 Dining Program. You click on that, and then it will host up to 2 sites, one for businesses to apply and one for residents to apply.
That's great.
Very good. Thank you, Howard.
All right, thank you.
Just thank you, everyone, for your patience. We miss seeing you. We're happy to be back. And that's it for the CRA.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay. The chairman's report usually includes a list of...
Sorry, to have some questions about the ministerial updates.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't know. So go ahead.
That's okay. Last meeting I asked about the wayfinders, and you said you get some information about where we are on that.
Yes, so where we are with that, it's what has been the holdup. The plans have been completed for a very long time, but one of the pedestrian signs has, not downtown, but a pedestrian bridge sign near Drew required approval from the county and from FDOT. So about 3 weeks ago. I believe they got that final permit and sign off from the county, which means we can now release it for bid. So I know I still owe you a link to all the files to see it, but that's been the holdup.
Okay, and the second one is about the USF interactive video experience. I believe that was put on hold because of the COVID-19 issues, so, okay.
Just
So,
cover my social distance here.
okay.
Hi.
Yes,
Yeah.
just trying to get an update on the USF interactive video experience.
Sure. So Rosemary DeMore, PR and Programs Manager with the CRA. So the USF project was set to launch in May. With COVID-19 and the university closing, they've had to delay the launch of that a little bit. But they have everything built. They just need to now test the AR application. They're again waiting for the time when the students can actually come out and do the testing. So once they're permitted to do that, we should be able to launch 2 weeks after that. So we'll have an update again for you next week, or I'm sorry, next meeting in July. But I'm hopeful that by the end of the summer, it'll be up and running.
And Rosemary, explain what testing looks like.
So they actually have to physically go out and use their phones and actually test the app to make sure that it's working. It's not something that we can do. It's not something that I have the technological capacity to do, and it actually has to be run through USF. So if we had the ability to do that, I would have done that. But yeah. Any other questions? Okay.
Thanks, Rosemary. Any other questions? Okay. So as I was saying, usually the chairman's report includes a list of forthcoming, upcoming events. Due to the crisis, there are very few such events happening. But there is some news, and that is, as was mentioned, the main downtown streets, the main blocks, the 400 block and the 500 block, are open for business. A lot of restaurants now have their tables and chairs out on the street, and it's good to hear that some signage is coming, so it doesn't say closed. Hopefully it says open instead of closed. And so those restaurants are open for business. They're doing well. They love what the city has done, and the city has shown great flexibility and willingness to work with the merchants in the closure of the street. Has been a difficult issue over the years to get the streets closed for an extended period of time. So I'm very happy to see that it was done from now through Labor Day. For those of you that don't know, Roxy's, Clear Sky, all of these places are open and running. The break room is also now open at lunch hour. So patronize your local downtown restaurants. Now we'll move on to board members' comments. And we'll ask, beginning on my left, for your comments.
Everybody is wondering if there'll be a U-shaped recovery, a V-shaped recovery, or a W-shaped recovery. As a son of a doctor, these are my 2 cents. My dad is a primary physician back in India, and he's actively fighting against the COVID pandemic. He's treating patients. He is 71 years old, and these are the insights from him. Viruses have been there for hundreds of years. There has been yellow fever, West Nile fever, and many other viral pandemics in other regions. Due to the cold, due to the geographic distance, North America and Europe have been spared from these viruses from a long time. The movie Contagion, which most have seen or heard about, is based on nymphovirus, which is an Asian-based virus. Due to globalization, we are having these viral diseases in the United States, which we haven't seen in many years. Don't listen to any negative naysayers. There will be a vaccine or a cure in the next 1 year or 2 years. But some associations, agencies want to portray as if this doomsday. I just want to say that probably by June, by the end of the year, we'll have a V-shaped recovery in the whole of the United States, as well as in downtown Clearwater, and everybody can go to restaurants, bars, and other social places. That's all.
Thank you. Shahab?
I'm actually warming up to the whole idea of blocking these two blocks as a permanent. I don't know what it takes to move forward towards that and initiate with the city council possibly to put some life into or pump more life into it. And the more we do this kind of music or just inviting people from all around, the more we will see that to do better and better. I would love to see some chefs come out and do some cooking maybe for downtown. Just inviting participation. That's probably the best way of doing it. And personally, in all my businesses that I've actually worked on, a very large portion of my expense has been and shall continue to be the marketing end, because if people don't know about us, they will never show up. Just because you have a website doesn't mean people are going to come there. People spend, I remember many, many years ago, happened to be a friend of mine, he spent at that time, which was a lot of money, $100,000 for business.com, because they thought the address does it. Address doesn't mean anything until you have it in front of people's faces. It's just, maybe by chance someone will, for curiosity, see where is business.com, what is that? You can have the most odd, strange address, and I don't know who thought Amazon would be first time I heard the name and go Amazon and Jungle. So it's how many times do we get in front of people and remind them we are here? And just a word of recommendation that as a group, the more we allocate funding for marketing, the better we will do. And the less we do, well, then we can have the most beautiful restaurant or most beautiful scenes, and if people don't know about it, they will never show up. So I'm for, I don't know if this is public, anybody watching this, maybe a few handful of people, but if you have ideas that you want to promote what we do in downtown, the better we do, and I will really welcome that.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Great.
I agree with two comments. I want to say I appreciate that you're going to doll up those two streets, because first of all, Dunedin doesn't even have that. And it's just producing a lot of traffic, a lot of walking people. If we can doll it up, maybe put some permanent seating in somehow, and again, road closed signs down, and make a name for it. And when people come down, they can't help but see it because they're going to drive right to the sign. I think it's going to be a real asset to downtown Clearwater.
Okay. Keenan?
I'd like to thank Amanda and Howard for all the work they've been doing and coordinating the form cleaning up the forms. I think will help quite a bit. I help give my 2 cents. I was confused on them. So that, and I'd like to thank the mayor for putting some boogie into the video. Bringing more people downtown, and there's just a lot going on that's good. You got people that have just moved here creating videos and promoting and stuff like Shahab was just saying. So I'm excited about what's happening, and I guess my 2 cents would be maybe we could figure out how to divert some of the bicycle traffic to loop down where the dining is, down in by the water. They could then either go across the bridge or continue on towards St. Pete, but there's already a lot of traffic there too. So.
Yes, I'd like to say I do agree with Ronnie's statement about closing up the 2 blocks. I think that's going to be very good. and thank Amanda and Howard for everything you guys have done during the whole COVID situation, and I'm glad to see everyone back and smiling, I guess. Thank you.
So I have a couple of items, if I may approach the podium.
Absolutely.
I absolutely, Caitlin Jammo, I absolutely echo all of the positive comments that have been given. I wish I were not here to present on, frankly, a not positive or a heartbreaking issue, but it's something that I think it's important for us as the DDB to address. I have two motions that I will be presenting to you all. The first has to do with the support of a resolution, and the second has to do with then trying to implement that resolution and take steps forward. The first motion I will be making, although I'll speak briefly about it, is moving to, for the GDB to adopt Resolution 20-01. That is in light of the recent events and the recent dialogue we're seeing, not only locally but also nationally, involving racial inequalities that face members of our communities. I want to start by just briefly pointing out the purpose of this resolution, yes, is to denounce the police brutality and those issues that we have seen. But more generally, it's to acknowledge the systemic inequalities that face members of our communities, and not only acknowledge, but then promise to take steps to try and address that. That can be seen in the language that I believe has been circulated, and I want to thank members of our community. I think our leaders have come forward. They've made statements that have been very impressive. Mayor Hibbard made what I thought was a very personal statement, and I was well received. I, in fact, stole a couple phrases in our proposed resolution. Again, the focus is to acknowledge and to promise. When deciding whether or not this was something that I thought was appropriate for the DDB and whether this was an appropriate platform to utilize for this, I looked to the mission of the Downtown Development Board, which is to promote, facilitate, and support activities that advance downtown revitalization. And frankly, while it's certainly just the right thing to do, in my opinion, I don't think we can achieve true downtown revitalization when you have members of our community that are facing these types of issues and these types of inequalities. So again, not only do I think it is the right thing to do, which is why I drafted it, but I also think that it's something that we have to do in order to succeed in our mission. So I would ask, I have the second motion to address maybe more specific steps we can take, but I would certainly answer any questions and ask that the board adopt this resolution.
Okay. Is there any, does anyone have any questions about the resolution that they want to ask Caitlin about? Okay. Can I have a motion for the adoption of resolution number 2001?
I move we adopt resolution number 20.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Very good. Okay, now is there any discussion by the board? Anything anyone would like to say? Yes, sir.
I guess it'll come out, you're going to clarify in the next item more details, is that right?
Well, this is just the resolution we're talking about now.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Shahab?
Yes. When I read this, at first I was surprised, but then looking at it, I have a very high amount of respect for our police force in this town. I personally have not seen them do anything aggressive towards citizens. So this is something that actually my guess would be they'll be behind it also. And as a group that we're in downtown, we're a very small group. And the police presence in downtown has been great. They've been, my short period of that I've been a citizen here, they've all been very cordial. So those are very isolated to very, very few individuals. So as a police force and what they do, which basically work in our environment to be safe, I think they would support this because they don't want to have anything like this be happening within their group. So, excuse me. So, I totally agree, and I don't know, did you write this? It's wonderful. I thought it's actually really clearly states that it aligns with the purpose of our country and how this country is put together. And unfortunately, when you have a few individuals, a bad apple creates us a situation, makes the whole thing look bad, which is not true. Our policemen work hard, and I think they do a great job. And I love their tweets that they do, what they do, because I follow the police department and the tweets to see what they say. I think this is great. Thank you.
Yeah, Ed, did you have something you wanted to say? No, okay. I would also like to just follow up on what you just said. We had a couple of protests or demonstrations in Clearwater in the downtown this past week, and they were quite different from those that have taken place in other areas. And they were very civil, they were very dignified, they were protesting, and they had a righteous anger about what they were protesting about. But they did not resort to violence. There was no looting, there was no arson. They were extremely well behaved, and they should be commended and thanked for that. The downtown is grateful for that. And the protesters and their leadership, and also all the churches, the civic groups, the community policing efforts that have gone, all the hard work over the years that resulted in that not happening to us this past week. So I just wanted to make that statement as well. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, so then I would call for a vote in favor of adopting this resolution. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it is unanimous. And you had a second item.
I did. So the final item that's included in that, in the resolution, talks about taking affirmative steps to identify the way the DDB can support and participate in the elimination of systemic racism. Now, by no means is this motion intended to be the be-all, end-all. I hope that this dialogue, as I know many in our country hope that this dialogue continues, but in trying to figure out, well, what's one step beyond just stating our support for these issues, what's something that we can do? And certainly, I welcome feedback here and in legally appropriate manners based upon sunshine law. But what I would suggest and what I'm asking for is that we create a committee, and it'd be something similar to the video project that we did last year. That was, we crowdsourced it. We said, submit your videos to us, although that was in the context of a prize. That's not what we're doing here. But submit your videos to us marketing downtown Clearwater, and we'll select the best ones. So what I would propose for here is that the committee, whether it be made of multiple members of us, it be made of me or another member of the DDB and other members of the community, basically take proposals from members of our community as to how to specifically address the systemic inequalities and racism that have projects, whether they be art-based, whether they be event-based, whether they be community and business-based, whatever it may be, submit proposals to specifically address this. And then the committee would review those proposals and then either fund one, fund multiple. Basically, the committee would be tasked with creating the process and then implementing the process after receiving those types of items. I would ask that, and maybe why I was a little bit nitpicky in terms of what line items we had, but I believe in line item 45, which is the future initiatives product, if we did 50,000 from that, we'd be left with 21,000. While it'd be nice to say, can I have 21,000, what I would suggest initially would be reallocating 10,000 of those funds into this committee project. Now, I or the committee, however we do it, would not be able to disperse these funds until going back before the board and saying, here are the selected projects, here's what the funding is, and here's what the criteria was. So I'm not asking for the court to, I'm not asking for the board to specifically allow for disbursements at this time, but the motion is for the DDB to create this committee, appoint someone to serve on this committee, and then also allocate $10,000 to a line item for this committee for these projects to then be approved later on.
Okay, any questions?
Yes. Here.
Yes.
Is there a volunteer for this committee?
I would volunteer.
I see, okay.
As an administrative and practical matter, it would be simplest if only one board member was on the committee and you could appoint other members to the committee, other interested parties that would be willing to volunteer. That way we would not be in violation of sunshine laws and you could, operate. Do we have a motion to adopt these recommendations?
I move to adopt this committee, forming this committee.
And with the additional, there was 3 things you mentioned, right?
Adopt the committee. I believe, Mr. Chair, you would appoint the committee.
Just like our attorney.
Sunshine law applies to your committees whether you have multiple DDB members or only one. The only way the sunshine law doesn't apply to your committee is if there's only one person on the committee because you're allowed to talk to your stuff. But even if if you appoint one DDB member and multiple other people that are not DDB members, you still have to treat it like a DDB meeting. Sunshine law
I
doesn't
see.
apply.
Okay. I stand corrected. Good thing we have an attorney on retainer. So then you would be operating independently.
In a vacuum by myself, but then I would submit to the board, here's what we received, here's what my recommendation is as the committee for it to be approved later on. But I would ask, so 1, creation of the committee, and then 2, the funding of the committee for $10,000 from line item 45.
So tentative funding of $10,000.
And we can work with you, obviously, to have people give input and have other kinds of meetings and things like that.
Okay. Can you state your motion that way?
If I may ask another question.
Sure.
Where did the number 10,000 come from?
The number 10,000 came from kind of reviewing all the prior funding requests that we've seen from various events. I tried to think of the various types of proposals we may receive, and I'm hoping they'll run the gambit. There'll be art proposals, but you can see even to create a video is approximately $2,000. I was hoping there may be an event, whether it be something to, show Black history or something along those lines, but events can certainly be costly. So my goal was to hopefully fund multiple events, and I was looking at it if we funded 4 different events or projects at $2,500, that would be great, but there could also be one project that makes perfect sense for it to be $10,000. So it kind of came out of the air, but it was also after reviewing all the prior funding requests that I've received over the last however many years I've been on the board.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I move to adopt this board.
I second it.
Very good. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you very much.
Did you have any other final comments?
Not for me. No, thank you.
Okay, good. And now our ex officio members.
Thank you for allowing me to be part of the board. I'm very pleased to be working toward making a more vibrant downtown. I too love the blocks being closed down. I know there's some issues with emergency vehicles being able to access the businesses in case of a fire or whatever. So we have to consider all of these. There's an alley behind the 400 block, but not behind the 500 as far as I'm aware. But I think we'll be discussing this on the city council and dealing with that. I don't know if you could just declare that the downtown is a welcoming place for all. We have to do something to prove that, and I greatly appreciate that you're wanting to bring in some projects for the African American community. Speaking to one of the fellows who was out protesting downtown recently, he said, well, there's nothing down here for us. I'm just an average Joe myself. There are a lot of restaurants downtown that are great, but they, you know, they're pretty expensive and they're frou-frou. Like, I love Lena, I love For Yours, but I was there the other night and somebody got a salad at my table, and it was a little wooden platter with some baby tomatoes and some flatbread and then something else. That's a salad? For how much? So, for me, downtown pizza is a affordable, fun place to go. If there were businesses and restaurants that appealed more to the African American community, that would help. Other than that, I just wanted to say thank you again.
Sir.
I served as an ex officio on the DDB from 2002 to 2004, so it's good to be back again. Thank you for all that you do. I know that you are invested and care about the downtown, as do I. I am committed to turning the downtown around and continuing to make it a great place to attract people not only from Clearwater but our whole region. I believe in the law of inertia. Bodies in motion stay in motion, and bodies at rest stay at rest. I think the downtown is starting to move, and I think if we can keep and grow that momentum, it will only build upon itself. If you hearken back to St. Petersburg, it was a place that people did not want to go about 25, 30 years ago. And they talk about the 20-year overnight miracle. So we've been working on our miracle down here for a while, and we will continue to do that. Amanda and I have been working on bringing a restaurateur to downtown that I think will be extraordinarily exciting, and again, show the type of momentum that is occurring. I'm sure we'll be able to share that with you in the future. As mentioned, we have had some protests. We will have another one on Sunday night down at Coachman Park. I will be attending and speaking at that. I have put together an outline for a summit on racial inequality that I've been sharing with other officials throughout the county. And I think it is a time that we need to step up and try to make some really formative change. And I hope to be a part of that. We are going to be having a special work session on Imagine Clearwater this coming Tuesday. That is going to be for the council. And then Thursday, we will be opening that up to the public, and there will be votes by the council on what direction we want to take on Imagine Clearwater. So I want not only the DDB to be aware of that, but also the public. So thank you all for all you're doing, and I look forward to working with you for the next several years.
Thank you. Now, my final comments are disparate. One is the street closure. Street closures have a varied history of success, and we need to examine and not make a hasty decision. I think we should review it over the summer and see how it proceeds and whether it works out or not before we as a board make any strong recommendations to the city regarding our views on whether it should continue or not. I think the initial results are very favorable. All the restaurant owners are very positive about it, but there are other impacts like the loss of parking on those 2 blocks, the access for delivery vehicles. There's other problems that we'll have to just assess over the period of the summer and just see what that really means. Part of the beautification of it and the appeal of it might be to replace some of the traffic barriers with concrete planters that would serve the purpose of blocking the street, but add something to look at other than, Bob's barricades and closed. So, but I understand that there is a need for fire truck access as well. Okay, now, that aside, in furtherance of the principles that came up in Caitlin's resolution, as the chair, I think it's appropriate that we reaffirm that no form of discrimination or prejudice is tolerated in this board by the Downtown Development Board or on it. The chair therefore proposes that we adopt as official policy that the DDB does not tolerate discrimination in any form, including on the basis of race, color, religion, age, disability, gender, sexual orientation, marital status, or national origin. I think that anyone making any discriminatory statement or taking any discriminatory action in our presence here should be issued a warning, and if continued, or if there's a second instance, that the person be asked to leave the meeting. I would like to have this adopted as an official policy of the Downtown Development Board, and I would like someone to make a motion to that effect.
I move that we adopt the anti-discriminatory policy as outlined by you, the chairman.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, sir. Is there any discussion? Okay. Thank you. Go, Shah.
Mr. Chairman, I'm curious, was this prompted because of this resolution that Ms. Yamo brought up?
I think that her bringing this resolution up more clearly defines what's happening in the country that's tearing the whole country apart at the moment is intolerance and injustice and just basic unfairness of minority, directed at minority groups or disadvantaged groups. And I think we need to make a statement that we will not tolerate it in our environment here. And the current circumstances, and then Caitlin bringing it up, just focuses that we should take a stand on that, not just out there, but right here.
I agree. It's commendable.
Okay. Yes.
Was this developed as a way to say we can't mention the word Scientology?
I don't think that states anywhere in here that one cannot mention the word Scientology. I think that's fairly clear. Yes.
I would ask if it's okay. I know that we're in a very passionate moment about everything that's happening, but staff hasn't seen that language. I mean, we haven't had a chance to talk with our attorney about it, so I'm just confused as to, is this a separate policy? Is this amending current policies? Is it, if the board would give us the opportunity, I'd just like to take a chance to look at it and meet with the lead so that we can get it in the right format and slate it into the right, like, should it actually be part of the bylaws? Should it be part of policies and procedures? We don't have to, but it would be helpful for me to know how to best administrate what you're describing, right? Because there's actions in there of determining what a comment is, and then there's enforcement actions. So I need more time, if you would allow me to look at what you prepared, think about it, talk about it, to figure out how we can best live it the way you imagine.
Well, I think
Mr. Chairman, if I may comment, I think this is baked into everything we do in the society in the United States.
It is.
It's baked into everything every government employee, as far as the hiring or even firing, any of that. So it's understandable that actually you want to consult and put some language in there. But it is actually not a bad idea with the whole concept of racism, and then we add the rest of it into it and incorporate it into it. It's and I agree that he seconded it. Actually, it's not a bad idea.
Right. Our attorney had a comment to make.
Seeing as there are already a lot of laws and rules in place, and you also talk about some enforcement in there, I don't think that you guys, I really do believe it needs further study, and if we're going to have a resolution, we have a resolution on the table, but I think it's premature. I think that it needs to be properly worded in light of other laws. I mean, right now it's against the law for this board to discriminate.
I understand.
All right, and it's against policy. So if you're going to take it as a statement. Is it going to be a rule? Is it going to be a policy like what you put together? I think it needs to be done properly, and you all don't have the structure right now.
Okay. Thank you. I think the semantics of it, of where it fits, and what to call it exactly, a rule or a policy or whatever. I think the key thing of importance is at this current time, in the circumstances we find ourselves in, that I think the board has the opportunity to make a statement on how we stand and how we feel about things, and we would like to make that statement, and we are totally amenable to modifying it or doing administrative details on where it fits into our rules and guidelines. But
I think my question is more around the enforcement. Maybe if you read it again, then I can point out the exact part. Because I don't have it in front of me, but when you first read it.
It basically, at the moment, the chair has the authority, if anyone says some statement that's out of line, that's against the law or that's violates somebody's civil rights or does something like that, the chair, or if somebody's just rude, like the rules of conduct at the back, the chair makes a decision and adjudicates right at the moment whether that's acceptable or not acceptable. And there isn't a long list. It's not in our bylaws to go by that rules of conduct, but we go by those rules of conduct. So we want the same thing would be done here. If somebody does something, we'd say, that's out of line, that's not acceptable. That's a violation of somebody's human rights.
In the policy you adopted today, you had a code of conduct. And should that be the part that's beefed up to make you more comfortable or to make the board's statement more complete? Should this be something in the bylaws? If you're going, I mean,
I'll tell you what.
This is the type of motion that should be particularly and carefully stated, and it's not.
Okay. What I suggest that we do is we have a motion before us. I would suggest we vote on it, and if we need to clean it up administratively, we can come back to it and do that. But I feel strongly about this, and I would like it to go to a vote. We have a motion, we have a second. I would just like to see where it goes.
Yeah.
So, sir.
I would also recommend slowing down, and I understand where you're coming from. The city itself has rules that, stand over you right now. As a chair that has run numerous meetings with oftentimes very abrasive people, I think you want to make sure that the language is very precise and how you're going to put it into your bylaws. The other thing that you have to keep in mind, which there are a lot of people that say things that I find repugnant, but they also have a First Amendment right to have an opinion. And I would be cautious about shutting people down based upon certain criteria. I have a gentleman now that comes to every meeting, and I've only had 5, who berates me at every meeting. I'm a big boy, I can take it. It is his First Amendment right to say things. They aren't even true. But I'd slow down and at least to let your attorney look at the language. It may be wonderful and you want to pass it at the next meeting. But, I think all of us right now are extremely emotional about what has been going on in the country. And I understand that. I applaud it. It is an opportunity for change and for this to be a better nation. At the same time, having been in government for 10 years, I also understand the law of unintended consequences. And that's something I'm always trying to look for in any decision that I make. And when I think I'm going to make a decision that can have unintended consequences, I generally put my foot on the brake a little bit so that I can slow down and consider the decision. We are ex officio. You can do whatever you want. But I do feel incumbent to say something and to try to guide things. Whether you take the advice certainly is up to you.
Okay.
And I say that with a smile behind my mouth.
Okay. I appreciate your comments. If someone can have, I'll get to you, someone can have a First Amendment right to come up and address us, but if he came up and started making racial slurs, that would not be acceptable, nor would it be just him exercising his First Amendment rights. I would not permit that in this forum. So if I can make that decision or that evaluation or judgment and say that is prohibited behavior before me, then I believe that I can also make the same judgment if the person is making slurs against people. If somebody was in here with a different sexual orientation, I should be able to say that's not acceptable communication in this forum. If someone is in here saying, that person's too young or too old or disabled or something like this and starts making slurs about them, I can take a position on that, and I feel quite justified in taking a position and in exercising a judgment on it. I don't think I'm violating their First Amendment rights when they are, engaging in infringing on somebody else's civil rights. So I feel strongly about that. Go ahead.
Just a quick question. What do we have to lose in taking advice of the attorney? What's the problem in just taking our advice or Amanda's advice and just going over what's written? I mean, why do we have a problem with that? What's the issue with that?
Okay, I'll take that up in a second. Caitlin, what were you going to say?
Sure. So my initial thought was maybe as to the rules of conduct, page 3, subsection 7, subsection A, of changing the language to in a respectful, civil, and non-discriminatory manner. My concern is exactly the First Amendment issue. I don't practice First Amendment law. I do probate litigation. I know enough to be dangerous that there's a distinction between if you're looking at the content of the language versus the method. And in reviewing the rules of conduct, everything is focused on the method. Is it disruptive? How is it said? Is it physically blocking the exits? My concern, if we add the language in there of non-discriminatory, is we may or may not, I don't know, be tracking the necessary language to make sure we are not conducting viewpoint analysis of this conduct. So I absolutely agree with the intent of this. I support it wholeheartedly. My only concern is I know that we want to make sure we use specific language. I would suggest it be through amending the rules of conduct that we've adopted, but I want to make sure that we use the exact language that doesn't get us into trouble. Because what we're talking about is not how the words are said, we're talking about what words are said. And when we start looking at content, you start running afoul of the First Amendment, and that's my only concern. So I would just want to make sure that we have Ms. Winters look into what specific language would not run afoul. That is my only concern.
Okay. We can have a vote go forward on the motion as saying that it needs to go through the attorney for her reversion and to come back to us if there's anything that needs modification, subject to modifications recommended by our attorney.
Which means that you would have a suspect policy in place for at least a month.
Yes, we would be making a statement, and that's what we're trying
And
to
your
do.
meeting's over after this, so what is the benefit of rushing?
It would be making a statement. That just as we made a statement, we didn't analyze Caitlin's resolution for
Actually,
sleep.
I did.
I mean, Caitlin did send it in advance. We've had 2 phone calls and emails. We've looked at it, and Lopez put it in the proper resolution format.
Right.
So we are your staff, and we are fully supportive. looking at putting in the, doing everything we need to do to achieve what it is that you're wanting to achieve. And typically the process that we followed is, staff is contacted in advance, and this has happened for many agenda items, right? So that we can prepare it to get rid of all those outstanding questions, is this legal? Is this the right format? Is it, get rid of all of that so that everybody then has copies in advance. You can trust that it's been put in the right form, right? Not to police your content, not trying to police your content, right? Just trying to make sure that it's something that you can do and won't get revoked or not be useful or not be possible, which I don't think that's the case, but we can't even answer that question right now because we haven't seen it. So
I think the motion here isn't to create something that's going to be carved in stone at the, in the halls of Congress. We're making a statement on how we intend things to go forward from here. We can have our attorney put it in the right legal language, but I would like for there to be an indication by the board today on whether they think this is a good idea or not, whether it needs revision or some changes in the wording or where it goes in our rules. I think that the motion should go forward. Go ahead, Elise. Go ahead.
I have been sitting here and I've heard all the discussion and I don't know what the actual motion is. You said, I want to make a statement about this, and if somebody violates it, then this, and this, and then whoever made the motion said, so moved. What part of that was accepted? The person who makes the motion has to state what it is you want to do. And if you're talking to me about, okay, we're not going to discriminate against this, that, and the other, and you said it 3 different ways, and we're going to take this action if you do that, and you said that 2 different ways, and then all I heard was so moved. So what did we so move?
I don't recall that happening that way, but that's what I said. Do you want the whole thing written into the motion, or do you just want a motion as per what I presented?
Well, it sounds like the actual motion that you're looking for is for staff to prepare in a statement or the appropriate form amendment to your newly adopted rules and procedures for an anti-discrimination clause.
Which is the law. Well, what we want to do is give him more power to control the meeting in case some things occur that just aren't right. One bad guy did a bad thing in Minneapolis, and the whole country, people died and everything else. And we want to put a stop to any form of discrimination. Any form. Now, I'm a Scientologist, and I have lived in Clearwater for a long time, and 95% of the people, it's just fine, it's great. But there's a few that don't care for it, and they suppress it, or they make bad things about it. That's not tolerable. I'm a broker. I'm a realtor emeritus, 46 years broker. I'm not allowed to do any of these things. I lose my license, I get sued. If I do something that discriminates against any one of those points. And that's all. We want to give him the power to control this meeting properly. That's all. I was just using it as an example, by the way. I would feel just as bad if any race, any transgender, anything was being suppressed. I would feel the same exact way.
So you would like us to distribute this to the DDB and determine how to make this possible?
No, what I'd like is a general motion on whether we are in favor of adopting such a policy, and if it needs fine-tuning or tweaking, our attorney can come back to us with the fine-tuning and tweaking, and we can modify it. But are we in favor of having a policy, an anti-discrimination policy along these lines? Okay. I wanted to have enough detail in there that you'd know what it was about.
Yes. Absolutely. We're just trying to figure out how to make it happen.
Yeah.
I was planning to go through the meeting today without saying Scientology at all. I was just happy for us to be sitting in a room and working to make downtown better. But I think Mr. Casano gave the game away when, he brought up Scientology as something he was worried about being discussed here.
It's an example because this is what I am.
understand.
If I was black, I would say the same thing about racial discrimination.
I understand.
Okay.
But my point is, I think this was introduced specifically because I was put on the board. May I suggest that it's an easy thing to just be civil. I remember a recent city council meeting where a number of people who look familiar here came before us to say the most horrible things about me. Did I lash back at you? No. Even though you said things which were totally untrue, like, Mr. Morphopoulos, you put a quote in my mouth that I didn't say. That was somebody who made a comment on an old blog of mine, more than a decade ago. But you said that was me saying this. Now, I didn't get upset at the meeting and call you out on all that. It was important for us to be civil and try to move forward. And I'm concerned that you're not taking the attorney's advice to just say, let's slow down. We have time to work this out, do this properly. You seem determined to get this done right now. And I believe Mr. Casano's, I'm not exactly sure how I want to express his eagerness to jump in with that. But it seems like this is something that you're doing specifically because I'm on the board. And I don't think it's necessary, for one. I'm happy to always sit down and talk calmly with anybody.
Our intent here today is not to draft a law, but to make a statement on our position at this particular point in history with everything that's going on, that we also think it should not include a strong stand against discrimination on the basis of race, but also on the entire other list as stated in my motion. And that's all we're doing. It doesn't become ironclad law. It's subject to amendment or suggestions by our attorney. Yes?
Why, there's a motion on the floor, so this is just discussion, but why, rather than adopt it right now, adopt and instruct your attorney to draft something for the next meeting?
Because
you have, the board has said they want an anti-discrimination policy that is in line with applicable laws and ordinances and procedures, and you are now asking that your attorney and staff get together and have it prepared for the next meeting.
we would, and we're providing you with the format of what we're looking for, and you can come back to us with what tweaking does it need in order to become an acceptable document, rather than just saying go out and create something and then come back to us and we'll vote on it. We're saying here's what we want, tell us what's wrong with it.
I don't think that you have to tell anybody what needs to be in an anti-discrimination policy who has worked with the law.
Well then there shouldn't be any issue.
I think what you need, but one, you guys haven't even given a definite motion. The motion that's on the floor was I accept, and it was I accept what was basically a not particularly, like I said, there were several different ways that it was phrased. I'm not even sure if I was taking the notes,
I think
what the motion would say.
At least I don't think it's that confusing. I think I read out a proposed policy. He suggested adopting the policy that I read out. I don't know what's unclear about that.
I mean, a sane, good person would go along with this anyway.
When you were talking, you also said if you did it a certain number of times, you'd be out of the meeting. Okay.
I didn't say a certain number of times. I said very specifically that if it happened once, he would get a warning. If it happened again, if there were continued instances, the person would be asked to leave the meeting.
Is this a person who's a member of the board, and do you have the authority to do that? Is this a person who's an ex officio member, and do you have the authority to do that? Is this a person who's a
I'll tell you what,
citizen?
we're going to hold the vote on the motion. If we're in favor of it, we're in favor of it. If we're not, we're not. And then you can come back to us with which details are not suitable for publication.
May I ask you to read that again?
The chair therefore proposes to make it official policy that the DDB does not tolerate discrimination in any form, including on the basis of race, color, religion, age, disability, gender, sexual orientation, marital status, or national origin. Anyone making any discriminatory statement or taking any discriminatory action will be issued a warning. And if continued, or if there is a second instance, the person will be asked to leave the meeting. The chair asks for a motion to adopt this as official policy of the board.
You want my motion? What I said?
I'm assuming that's your motion. I also
That
see
is the
legal
motion.
problems with it.
Well, that's what we're going to ask you to come back to us with.
And so we're going to adopt an illegal motion that will be in place for a motion that has legal problems that will be in place until you adopt a new one.
You have that right.
There isn't a meeting before you come back to us.
Pardon?
There isn't going to be a meeting before you come back to us. So it's not going to
But
create...
you're adopting it now.
Yes, but it isn't going to
And
create...
so there will be, and when I come back, so until the next meeting, you have on the books a policy that has legal issues.
Okay. We're making a statement, and we're following it up with as amended, or basically we're trying to make a statement of what our position is in this time. And we want to make that statement. Go ahead, Caitlin.
I absolutely agree with the idea. I am going to make a motion to amend your motion for the DD to be that the DDB adopt an anti-discrimination policy within either its bylaws or its rules of conduct, similar to what has been proposed, but pursuant to specific language to be provided by our council. I believe we need a second.
I think that makes, Mr. Chairman, I think that makes sense, because all, what he pointed out, except the person did a warning and all that, that aligns with the federal law, isn't it?
Pardon?
Except the second part that he says the person gets a warning and the second they get removed. Other than that, the beginning part, it aligns with the federal law.
Until you get down to, I have a real problem with the warning and the removal part.
Doesn't he have that
Okay.
right anyway? I mean, if anybody came up and started doing something not okay, doesn't he have the right to control the meeting?
You know, somebody who comes up here and says, I think that gay bar downtown is causing us to lose business all along the street. That's part of...
It's a First Amendment comment.
Yeah, that's First Amendment. The guy, you may not like what they say, but they have a right to say, I think that gay bar down the street is ruining our business. And they have a right to come up here and say, you don't have a right to do anything about it because you are not allowed to discriminate against a gay bar. All right? I have a right, anybody has a right to come up and say, I think downtown would be better if we, and I'm going to just hit the issue on it, I think downtown would be better if the Church of Scientology was not here. Now, you don't have to let them get into a big discussion about it because there's something, it's not part of your, nothing the DDB can do about it. You can say, that's not on our agenda, that's not our purpose, and we don't have the power to do that. But they still have the right to say it. Okay? I can come in and say, I think there's no way we should allow a Catholic church in downtown. Someone I won't because, I'm Catholic, but, they have the right to come in and say that, and you have the right to say, well, there's nothing we can do about that. We don't have that power, we don't have that authority. But people are allowed to come in and say things like that. And you can't say that's discriminatory. You can say it's discriminatory if they won't hire on that basis. You can say it's discriminatory if they won't rent on that basis. You can say it's discriminatory if, but just saying the words, that's not. That's First Amendment. And that's part of the concern I've got about what you guys are doing, because the way you're expressing it, you're saying we don't care what the First Amendment says. And we also have in place enforcement. So no, he has a right to, and what we've already written gives him the right to stop somebody who's into areas that the downtown don't have anything to do with the downtown. We can say, oh, we don't care what you, I mean, yes, as people, we care about countryside, but we're not going to give you the podium for countryside because that's not within our area. That's not within our business. We can say, they can come in and say, I feel that gay business in downtown is a problem, and we want you to do this, that, and the other thing. Well, I'm sorry, we're not going to waste a lot of time discussing this because we're not an enforcement agency. Even if we were an enforcement agency, we have no right to discriminate. We, as a government authority, have no right to discriminate. But people can say obnoxious things. They cannot come in and say, you do this, or like those armed guys in one of the Midwestern states. They cannot come in and say, we're going to intimidate you into ruling our way. That you have a right to say no to. If they come in and say, you are a total blah, 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 that you have a right to say that's discourteous, it's in the policy, I'm sorry, you'll have to leave.
Okay, let's not beat it to death. Caitlin, tell us again what your suggestion is.
Sure. What I was doing was moving just to amend your motion to say that we will adopt an anti-discrimination policy to be drafted, reviewed by CRA as well as our council, and adopted at a future meeting.
Good. Do we have a second for that?
Second.
Very good. Now, so there's one motion now that's been amended.
I've sought to amend. I would call to the previous question my motion to amend. So this would just be a vote on whether or not to amend your original motion.
Okay. So is there any further discussion on that? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
I would vote for that. That acceptable? Okay. So now we have the original motion. Or no, this handles that. That vote handles that.
Mr. Pisano should have accepted the amendment because he's the one that made the motion.
You can instruct
And the
us here on the...
seconder would also accept it.
I accept it.
Okay,
So
so
you're good.
he accepts it. Okay. So then we will leave it at that. And okay, with that, at 7:52, this meeting is adjourned.